Imagine a child struggling with math problems. One child throws down the pencil, saying, "I'm just not good at math." Another frowns, takes a deep breath, and mutters, "This is hard, but I'll figure it out." What's the difference between the two? It's not intelligence, it's mindset. At the heart of personal development, achievement, and learning lies a powerful idea known as the growth mindset. Coined by psychologist Dr. Carol Dweck of Stanford University, the term refers to the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed through dedication, effort, and persistence. In contrast, a fixed mindset assumes that talent and intelligence are static traits, unchangeable no matter how hard you try. In a growth mindset, challenges are welcomed. Setbacks are viewed not as evidence of failure, but as a necessary part of learning. It's the belief that we are all capable of change, of development, and of unlocking greater potential through effort. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research in the late 20th century gave rise to this concept. In a series of studies, Dweck and her team observed how children responded to failure. Some rebounded from mistakes, eager to try again. Others were devastated, shutting down at the first sign of difficulty. This divergence led Dweck to explore how underlying beliefs about intelligence influenced motivation and performance. Her research found that when people believed intelligence was malleable, they were more likely to embrace challenges, persevere, and ultimately succeed. This wasn't just psychology. It had profound implications for education, parenting, business, and personal development. Mindset is more than just a way of thinking. It shapes our behavior, relationships, and life outcomes. Let's take a moment to consider a few examples. Students with a growth mindset tend to perform better in school, are more likely to recover from poor grades, and take more academic risks. Employees with a growth mindset adapt more easily to change, collaborate more effectively, and seek feedback for improvement. Athletes with this mindset train harder, rebound from loss with stronger resolve, and focus on progress rather than perfection. The implications are clear. Those who believe they can improve are more likely to improve. One of the most compelling arguments for the growth mindset comes from neuroscience. The human brain is capable of neuroplasticity. Its structure and function can change with learning and experience. This means that the more we use certain neural pathways, the stronger they become. Learning a new skill, developing emotional regulation, or even changing a belief system, all of this is possible because the brain is adaptable. This scientific evidence supports the core message of growth mindset. We can improve through effort and strategy. Growth mindset in contrast to fixed mindset. To further understand the power of a growth mindset, let's contrast it with its counterpart, the fixed mindset. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Intelligence is static. Intelligence can be developed, avoids challenges, embraces challenges, gives up easily, persists in the face of setbacks, sees effort as fruitless, sees effort as a path to mastery, ignores useful feedback, learns from criticism, feels threatened by the success of others, finds inspiration in others' success. Results plateau early, achieve less. Results reach higher levels of achievement. This comparison reveals how deeply mindset can affect our daily choices and long-term goals. Common misconceptions. Before diving deeper, it's important to address a few common misconceptions about the growth mindset. 1. Having a growth mindset means being positive all the time. Not true. Growth mindset is not about toxic positivity. It acknowledges frustration, fatigue, and failure, but sees them as steps on the path to success. 2. If I praise effort, that's enough. Dweck has emphasized that praising effort alone isn't the goal. The focus should be on effective effort, strategy, and progress, not just trying hard. People either have a growth mindset or they don't. Mindsets are situational and can shift. You might have a growth mindset in sports, but a fixed one in relationships or math. The goal is to cultivate awareness and grow across domains. The role of language and self-talk. Much of our mindset is revealed in our internal dialogue. Phrases like, "I'm not good at this," "I'll never get it," or "I'm just not a natural" signal a fixed mindset. On the other hand, language like, "I can learn this," "mistakes help me grow," or "this is hard, but it's worth it," fosters a growth orientation. In fact, simply adding the word "yet" can transform our thinking. "I can't do this" becomes "I can't do this yet." This tiny shift can create space for hope and possibility. Why this topic matters now. In a world characterized by rapid change, uncertainty, and increasing complexity, The growth mindset is more relevant than ever. With automation, AI, and global challenges reshaping our careers and societies, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is critical. Moreover, as mental health concerns rise, especially among youth and professionals, understanding how to navigate setbacks and cultivate resilience is vital. The growth mindset offers a psychological toolkit for dealing with pressure, failure, and change constructively. In this first section, we've explored what the growth mindset is, where it comes from, and why it's essential. It's more than a buzzword, it's a transformational approach to life. But first, let's pause and reflect. Where do you see yourself embracing a growth mindset? Where might you still be stuck in fixed thinking? And more importantly, what might be possible if you truly believed in your capacity to grow? Section 2, Origins and Research Behind the Growth Mindset, the birth of a revolutionary idea. Imagine being told that your intelligence is not a fixed trait, that it can grow, stretch, and strengthen just like a muscle. This idea, which runs counter to decades of assumptions in education and psychology, came to the forefront thanks to one persistent researcher and a simple but powerful insight. Our beliefs about our abilities shape our success more than the abilities themselves. This revolutionary concept is at the heart of what we now call the growth mindset, and its origins lie deep within decades of psychological research, particularly the work of Dr. Carol Dweck, a professor of psychology at Stanford University. Carol Dweck didn't set out to change how the world thinks about intelligence. As a young researcher in the 1970s and 1980s, she was fascinated by one central question: why do some people rebound from failure while others are crushed by it? She noticed something curious in children. When presented with difficult tasks, some kids became energized and excited, while others quickly gave up. Dweck began to explore the motivational forces behind success and failure, aiming to understand the beliefs that drove persistence and resilience. Her research led to the discovery that people generally fell into two categories based on their implicit theories of intelligence. Entity theorists believed intelligence is fixed. You either have it or you don't. Incremental theorists believed intelligence can be developed. You can grow your brain through effort and learning. These became the foundation of what she would later term the fixed mindset and growth mindset. The groundbreaking studies. Dweck's earliest experiments were deceptively simple but incredibly revealing. In one study, she gave children puzzles to solve. As the puzzles became more difficult, children with a fixed mindset would often become frustrated and stop trying. Those with a growth mindset, however, saw the challenge as an opportunity. Some even exclaimed, "I love a challenge." In a now famous study, Dweck and her colleague Claudia Muller gave children a set of tasks to perform and then praised them in two different ways. One group was praised for their intelligence. "You're so smart." The other group was praised for their effort. "You worked really hard." The results were striking. Children praised for intelligence became more concerned with looking smart than learning, and they shied away from harder tasks. On the other hand, children praised for effort took on more difficult challenges and demonstrated better performance over time. This showed that even well-meaning praise can shape how children perceive themselves and their abilities, and can either encourage or inhibit a growth mindset. While Dweck's research was rooted in psychology, the concept of a growth mindset gained further credibility through discoveries in neuroscience. The brain is not static, it changes with use. This phenomenon is known as neuroplasticity. Studies using MRI technology have shown that learning actually changes the structure of the brain. When we practice something new, whether it's math, a sport, or a musical instrument, our brain forms new neural connections. The more we practice, the stronger these pathways become. This biological evidence supports the notion that ability is not fixed. With effort, practice, and the right strategies, our brains can adapt and improve. The growth mindset isn't just a feel-good idea, it's grounded in science, criticism, and nuance in the research. Despite its popularity, the growth mindset concept has not been without criticism. Some researchers have raised questions about the effect size of interventions based on Dweck's findings. In certain studies, when teachers attempted to instill a growth mindset in students, the results were inconsistent or modest at best. Dweck has responded to these concerns by clarifying that growth mindset is not a quick fix. Simply telling students to try harder or believe in themselves is not enough. Instead, schools and parents must create environments that support learning, provide constructive feedback, and model growth mindset behavior themselves. More recent research suggests that context matters greatly. A supportive learning environment, belief in student potential, and aligned teaching strategies are all critical in translating mindset theory into real-world success. Cultural and global impact. Over the past 2 decades, the growth mindset has made waves across the globe. Schools in the US, UK, Australia, and many other countries have incorporated mindset principles into their curricula. Major companies like Google and Microsoft have adopted growth mindset philosophies to train employees and foster innovation. Even sports and arts communities have embraced the concept. Elite athletes and performers often talk about the importance of deliberate practice, resilience, and learning from failure, all key components of a growth mindset. What started as a psychological theory has become a global movement, influencing education, business, parenting, and even politics. From research to real life, one of the most powerful aspects of Dweck's work is its accessibility. You don't need a PhD to understand the core message. You can improve. Teachers use it to inspire students. Parents use it to encourage their children. Coaches use it to push athletes to their potential. Leaders use it to build high-performing teams. But mindset isn't just about believing you can grow. It's about acting on that belief. The real challenge lies in changing habits, reactions, and systems that reinforce a fixed view of ourselves, the evolving definition. It's important to note that Dweck herself has refined her theory over time. In recent years, she has warned against the rise of what she calls the false growth mindset, a superficial version of the concept where people say the right words, I believe in effort, but don't embrace the deeper work involved. A true growth mindset involves accepting and learning from failure, seeking feedback even when it's hard, putting in deliberate effort, not just trying harder, recognizing that growth takes time, strategy, and reflection. Understanding these nuances is crucial as we explore how to build and apply a growth mindset in everyday life, something we'll dive into in the next section. Conclusion to Section 2, Seeds of Change. The story of the growth mindset is not just the story of a theory, it's the story of a paradigm shift. Thanks to decades of rigorous research, the once rigid view of intelligence and talent has given way to a more dynamic understanding of human potential. But knowing the science is just the beginning. The next step is applying it, challenging the voice inside us that says, I'm not good at this, and replacing it with, I'm not good at this yet. Section 3, Applying the Growth Mindset in Education, Business, and Personal Life. Education is the most fertile ground for nurturing a growth mindset. It's where beliefs about intelligence, ability, and potential often begin to form, and where they can either be limited or liberated. A growth mindset in education encourages students to understand that their abilities are not fixed, but can be cultivated through effort, strategy, and help from others. The traditional paradigm versus growth-oriented education. For decades, many educational systems operated under the assumption that intelligence is largely innate. This fixed mindset often led to early labeling of students as gifted or struggling, shaping their identities and limiting their potential. But research by Dr. Carol Dweck and others has shown that when students are taught to believe they can grow and improve, their performance often changes dramatically. Growth-minded schools and teachers shift the focus from innate ability to learning strategies, perseverance, and continuous improvement. Feedback changes from you're so smart to you worked really hard on that. This subtle shift in language has profound implications for how students view themselves and their capabilities. Teacher influence. The mindset multiplier. Teachers play a pivotal role in shaping student mindsets. Their expectations can be self-fulfilling prophecies. A teacher who believes every student can grow is more likely to provide opportunities for growth, challenging tasks, constructive feedback, and encouragement to persist through failure. Additionally, when teachers model their own learning processes, share stories of failure and growth, and maintain high standards while providing support, students learn that struggle is a part of learning, not a sign of inadequacy. Classroom strategies for fostering a growth mindset. Here are some evidence-based strategies that promote a growth mindset in classrooms. Effort-based praise. Emphasize effort, strategy, and progress over results. Process-oriented feedback. Focus on what students did well and where they can improve. Normalizing mistakes. Create a culture where errors are seen as a necessary part of learning. Growth-focused language. Encourage statements like I can't do this yet instead of I'm just not good at this. Goal setting and reflection. Guide students to set personal goals and reflect on their learning journey. Long-term benefits. Students with a growth mindset show greater academic resilience, motivation, and achievement. They are more likely to seek help, embrace challenges, and persist through obstacles. Over time, they build not just academic skills, but life skills, grit, curiosity, and the courage to take risks. In essence, instilling a growth mindset in education isn't just about better test scores. It's about empowering lifelong learners who can adapt, innovate, and thrive in a world that constantly changes. Growth mindset in business. In the competitive, fast-paced world of business, adaptability and resilience are vital. Companies that cultivate a growth mindset don't just survive. They innovate, grow, and lead. A growth mindset in business affects everything from leadership styles and team dynamics to innovation, talent development, and organizational culture. Fixed mindset companies versus growth mindset companies. A fixed mindset company views talent as static. It values star performers, resists change, and often discourages risk-taking for fear of failure. This kind of culture can foster internal competition, fear of judgment, and ultimately stagnation. By contrast, a growth mindset company embraces the idea that skills can be developed. It encourages feedback, experimentation, and collaborative problem solving. Employees are not punished for failures, but are encouraged to learn from them. Research conducted by Dweck and her team found that employees in growth mindset organizations feel more empowered and committed. They describe their companies as more innovative, ethical, and willing to take risks. They also report higher levels of trust and collaboration. Leadership and growth mindset. Great leaders embody and promote a growth mindset. They view their own role as a work in progress and encourage the same mindset in others. Growth-minded leaders are vulnerable, willing to admit mistakes and learn from them. Encouraging. They celebrate progress and learning rather than just outcomes. Empowering. They trust their teams, delegate responsibility, and encourage initiative. These leaders see talent development as a core responsibility. They mentor employees, provide stretch opportunities, and frame challenges as growth opportunities. Talent development and performance. Traditional performance reviews often focus on past outcomes, what the employee did or didn't achieve. A growth mindset shifts the focus to development. It asks, how did this person grow? What did they learn? How did they handle feedback? What could they improve on? This shift fosters psychological safety, where employees feel safe to take risks, ask questions, and admit errors without fear of punishment. Google's Project Aristotle found that psychological safety was the #1 predictor of high-performing teams. And psychological safety thrives in a culture where growth is valued over perfection. Innovation and risk-taking. Innovation requires taking risks and tolerating failure. In a fixed mindset culture, failure is a threat. In a growth mindset culture, failure is information. Companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Netflix are well known for encouraging bold experiments and learning from them. Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft into a growth mindset-driven organization is a textbook example. Under his leadership, the company moved from a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all one. The results: increased employee morale, renewed innovation, and financial resurgence. Here's how businesses can foster a growth mindset. Celebrate learning. Recognize not just achievements, but progress and effort. Give constructive feedback. Focus on behavior and improvement, not personal traits. Promote from within. Invest in employee development and internal mobility. Model learning from mistakes. Leaders should share what they've learned from failure. Encourage collaboration over competition. Create environments where teams grow together. A growth mindset in business is not just about individual development. It's a competitive advantage. Companies that learn faster adapt faster, and companies that adapt survive and thrive. Beyond the classroom and the office, the growth mindset has profound implications for our personal lives. It shapes how we view ourselves, our relationships, our goals, and even our failures. Adopting a growth mindset can lead to greater happiness, better health, and more fulfilling relationships, self-identity, and personal growth. How we see ourselves, our abilities, worth, and potential shapes the decisions we make every day. A fixed mindset can trap us in the belief that we are not good at relationships, bad with money, or just not athletic. A growth mindset challenges these identities. It asks, what if I could improve in this area with effort, learning, and the right support? Whether it's learning a new language, improving emotional regulation, or developing a healthy lifestyle, the growth mindset offers a roadmap. Effort, strategy, feedback, progress. Relationships and communication. Relationships thrive on understanding, empathy, and effort. A fixed mindset might view relationship struggles as signs of incompatibility. We're just not meant to be. But a growth mindset sees conflict as an opportunity to grow closer, to understand more deeply, and to become better communicators. Dr. Dweck's research found that couples with a growth mindset are more likely to work through conflict, support each other's development, and stay together longer. In friendships and family dynamics, this mindset promotes forgiveness, patience, and the belief that people can change. It replaces judgment with curiosity and blame with problem solving. Parenting with a growth mindset. Parents who model and encourage a growth mindset raise more resilient, confident children. Instead of praising intelligence, they praise effort and persistence. Instead of shielding kids from struggle, they help them learn how to face it. Key parenting strategies include encouraging autonomy, letting kids make decisions and learn from mistakes, focusing on process, highlighting the how rather than just the what, modeling growth, sharing your own efforts to improve or learn something new. This creates a home culture where growth is normal, mistakes are okay, and learning is lifelong. Health, fitness, and habits. Many people struggle with fitness or mental health because of a fixed mindset. I've never been athletic, I'll always be anxious, or I can't stick to habits. But science shows the brain and body are far more adaptable than we think. With consistent effort, new strategies, and supportive environments, people can change behaviors, strengthen willpower, and even rewire thought patterns. A growth mindset encourages us to view relapses as part of the process, not personal failures. Experiment with different strategies rather than giving up. Track progress and celebrate small wins. Even setbacks become useful data, helping us adjust our approach and try again. Resilience in life challenges. When life throws challenges, illness, loss, financial hardship, a growth mindset becomes a tool for survival and renewal. It doesn't deny the pain, but it invites the question, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? People with a growth mindset tend to recover from trauma with greater strength. They reframe struggles as meaningful. They believe they can shape their future, even if the path is long or uncertain. Practical ways to cultivate growth in daily life. Journaling. Reflect on progress, not just outcomes. Reading and learning. Commit to lifelong learning through books, podcasts, or courses. Surround yourself with others who support your growth. Affirmation and self-talk. Use not yet language to remind yourself that growth is ongoing. The growth mindset is more than a motivational slogan. It's a practical, evidence-based framework that transforms how we learn, lead, and live. In education, it empowers students to embrace challenges. In business, it drives innovation and resilience. In personal life, it fosters self-belief, stronger relationships, and greater fulfillment. The power of the growth mindset lies in its simplicity. Who you are today is not who you have to be tomorrow. With the right mindset, every challenge becomes an invitation to evolve. Start with self-awareness. Cultivating a growth mindset begins with recognizing when and where we operate with a fixed mindset. Start paying attention to your inner dialogue. Do you find yourself saying things like, I can't do this, or I'm just not good at that? Do you feel defeated when you fail or face criticism? Do you compare yourself negatively to others? These are all signs of a fixed mindset at work. The first step is noticing. Awareness doesn't mean judgment. It means observing your thought patterns with curiosity. One helpful tool is journaling. Each evening, jot down a moment when you faced a challenge or setback. Reflect on how you responded. Did you shut down or lean in? Did you embrace the discomfort or avoid it? This small habit alone begins to rewire your brain for awareness and eventual change. Reframe negative self-talk. Once you're aware of your fixed mindset thoughts, the next step is to reframe them. This doesn't mean slapping on toxic positivity. It means learning to challenge your inner critic and replace limiting beliefs with empowering alternatives. Instead of saying, I'm terrible at this, try, I'm still learning this. I failed becomes, I haven't figured it out yet. This is too hard reframes as, this will take time and effort and that's okay. This tiny shift, adding yet, is powerful. It opens the door to possibility. You're not there yet, but you can get there. Set process-oriented goals. People with a fixed mindset often focus on outcomes, grades, awards, promotions, but growth mindset thrives on process, the effort, the strategy, the persistence. So when you're setting goals, instead of focusing only on the result, think in terms of what you can control. Not, I want to run a marathon, but I will train 4 days a week, gradually increasing my mileage. Not, I want an A in math, but I'll practice problems for 30 minutes every day. Process-oriented goals help you build momentum. They reward persistence and consistency, not just final results, and they help you enjoy the journey, not just the destination. Celebrate effort, not just success. We live in a culture that celebrates winning, fame, and achievement. But if you want to develop a growth mindset, you need to learn to celebrate something else. Effort. This means giving yourself credit for trying, for showing up, for working hard, even if the outcome isn't perfect. It also means praising others the same way. Carol Dweck, the psychologist behind the growth mindset framework, found that when kids were praised for effort rather than intelligence, they became more resilient, more curious, and more willing to tackle challenges. So instead of telling someone, "You're so smart," say, "You worked really hard on that," or "I admire how persistent you were." These words plant seeds of growth. Embrace challenges and discomfort. A growth mindset doesn't mean pretending everything is easy. It means learning to be comfortable with discomfort, to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. This is where many people give up. The moment things get hard, the fixed mindset creeps in. "See, I told you I wasn't cut out for this." But what if struggle was part of the process? What if frustration meant you were about to break through? To practice this, deliberately seek out challenges. Learn something new. Try a project that intimidates you. Ask for feedback you'd normally avoid. Over time, your brain rewires to associate challenge with opportunity, not failure. Learn from criticism and failure. People with a fixed mindset often see criticism as a personal attack, but people with a growth mindset see it as information, data that can help them improve. This doesn't mean criticism is always easy to hear, but it becomes valuable when we use it constructively. The same goes for failure. Every mistake carries a lesson. Instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Try this reflection exercise after a failure. What went wrong? What part of this was in my control? What could I do differently next time? Over time, you'll learn to bounce back faster, not because you're tougher, but because you're more curious. Surround yourself with growth-minded people. Mindset is contagious. If you're surrounded by people who believe in learning, effort, and resilience, it will rub off on you. This doesn't mean abandoning friends, but it does mean being intentional about the energy you absorb. Look for mentors, communities, and conversations that reinforce growth. Ask questions like, "What did you learn from this? How did you overcome that obstacle? What advice would you give someone just starting out?" These questions invite stories of resilience, not perfection. Practice mindfulness and gratitude. Mindfulness helps you observe your thoughts without judgment. It gives you the space to respond rather than react. Just 5 to 10 minutes of mindful breathing each day can create enough space to catch your mindset patterns before they take over. Gratitude, meanwhile, keeps your brain focused on growth. Try this evening habit. Name one challenge you faced today. Name one thing you learned. Name one thing you're proud of. These practices don't just make you feel better, they train your brain to see growth in motion. Teach it to others. The best way to reinforce a growth mindset? Teach it. Explain it to your kids, your friends, your team. When you articulate the principles, effort over outcome, learning over perfection, curiosity over fear, you begin to embody them more fully. You don't have to be perfect. In fact, your vulnerability will make the lesson more real. Say, "I'm working on this too. Let's grow together." 10. Make growth a lifestyle, not a buzzword. Finally, remember that a growth mindset is not a quick fix. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of approaching everything from your relationships to your career, your habits to your hobbies. You won't get it right every day. That's okay. The point is not perfection, it's progress. Each time you choose growth, even in the smallest way, you strengthen that mindset. You lay another brick in the foundation of a resilient, curious, and empowered life. So the next time you face a challenge, hear criticism, or feel the sting of failure, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what would a growth mindset do here? That question alone can change your life. Section 5, Growth Mindset in Action. Imagine walking into a classroom where mistakes are celebrated, challenges are embraced, and effort is more valuable than the final grade. Or consider a workplace where feedback is not feared, but welcomed, where "I don't know" is not a weakness, but an invitation to learn. This is the world powered by a growth mindset, the classroom of the future. Growth mindset has had one of its most powerful impacts in education. When students believe their intelligence can grow with effort, they become more motivated, more resilient, and more willing to take on challenges. Let's look at how this plays out. Remember, mistakes mean we're learning. If it's too easy, you're not growing. This kind of language creates a culture where failure is not feared, but embraced as part of learning. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck, who pioneered the concept of growth mindset, found that students who believe their abilities can develop outperform those who think intelligence is fixed, especially after setbacks. Student interview. "I used to think I was just bad at math, but now I know my brain gets stronger every time I struggle with a hard problem. It's not about being smart, it's about working smart." Educators around the world are embedding growth mindset into grading systems, feedback styles, and teaching techniques. They reward persistence, curiosity, and improvement, not just right answers. And the result? Students who are more engaged, less anxious, and better prepared for a world that demands lifelong learning. The growth-oriented workplace. Now let's move from the classroom to the boardroom. In the modern economy, where innovation is constant and industries evolve rapidly, a growth mindset isn't just helpful, it's essential. We're going to review last quarter's results. Let's focus on what we can learn and how we can improve. Failure is just data. Growth mindset transforms workplace culture by shifting the focus from blame to learning. It fosters psychological safety, where team members feel secure to share ideas, voice concerns, and admit mistakes. That's the foundation of innovation. We hire for learning agility, not just skills. We want people who are curious, open to feedback, and eager to grow. That's how we stay competitive. Leaders play a critical role. When managers model growth mindset by admitting their own mistakes, seeking feedback, and valuing effort, they inspire the same in their teams. Research shows that organizations with growth mindset cultures have higher employee engagement, lower turnover, and better performance. My boss once told me, "Don't worry about getting it perfect. Let's learn by doing." That changed everything for me. Relationships. Growth mindset doesn't stop at work or school. It deeply influences how we interact with others in friendships, families, and romantic relationships. Partner 1. I used to shut down when we argued. I thought we just weren't compatible. But learning about growth mindset helped me see that we could improve how we communicate if we put in the work. In relationships, a fixed mindset can sound like they'll never change or this is just who I am. But a growth mindset invites us to believe in the potential for change in ourselves and each other. Cut to family therapy session. Parents who adopt a growth mindset focus on praising effort, strategies, and persistence rather than labeling their children as smart or talented. This encourages kids to try, fail, and try again without fear of losing their identity. We started saying things like, "You worked really hard on that," instead of "You're so smart." The difference in our daughter's confidence has been huge. Personal development. Let's talk about you, your goals, your habits, your inner voice. Growth mindset is the fuel for self-improvement. It helps you reframe challenges not as threats, but as opportunities. Cut to montage. Someone learning new skills, cooking, coding, jogging. When you hit a wall, your mindset matters. A fixed mindset says, "I'm just not good at this." A growth mindset says, "I'm not good at this yet." Cut to journal entry. I failed the certification exam. I felt defeated. But then I remembered, this is a chance to learn. I reviewed my weak areas and passed the second time. That felt even better. That simple shift from judgment to curiosity changes how we face everything, from career goals to health journeys. It transforms obstacles into stepping stones. A growth mindset isn't just a tool for school or work. It's a philosophy for life. It's about believing in the power of change, the potential in practice, the promise in perseverance. Diverse people in different settings, smiling and working together. So whether you're teaching a child, building a team, healing a relationship, or chasing a dream, remember, your abilities are not fixed. Your story is still being written. And with effort, learning, and a little courage, you can grow into anything. Section 6, debunking the myths, common misconceptions about growth mindset. It's easy to latch onto the term growth mindset and think we've got it all figured out. After all, it sounds straightforward. Believe you can improve, and you will. But the truth is, the growth mindset concept, though powerful, has often been oversimplified, misapplied, or misunderstood. Misconception. A growth mindset means believing anyone can do anything. One of the most persistent myths is that adopting a growth mindset means believing everyone can become a genius or world-class expert at anything they choose. While it's true that ability can be developed with effort, strategy, and support, it doesn't mean all limits disappear. A growth mindset doesn't ignore the reality of natural talent, physical limits, or situational barriers. It simply means we believe that with effort and learning, improvement is always possible. For example, not everyone will become an Olympic athlete or a Nobel Prize winning scientist, but everyone can improve in their chosen field, surpass expectations, and discover potential they didn't know they had if they embrace learning, feedback, and persistence. Growth mindset is not blind optimism. It's grounded in realistic, purposeful growth. Misconception. Praising effort alone builds a growth mindset. Another common misunderstanding is the idea that we should always praise effort, no matter the outcome. Great job trying becomes the go-to phrase, but praising effort without acknowledging results or strategies can backfire. Carol Dweck, the psychologist who coined the term growth mindset, has cautioned against this shallow interpretation. It's not about glorifying effort for its own sake. It's about recognizing effective effort. The key is to connect effort to learning and improvement. For example, instead of "you tried your best, that's all that matters," try "you worked hard and tried a new method. That's what helped you solve it." In other words, we don't just celebrate the act of trying. We value the quality of effort, the strategies used, and the willingness to learn from mistakes. Misconception. You either have a growth mindset or you don't. Many people assume mindset is binary. You're either fixed-minded or growth-minded. But in reality, we all carry a mix of both. You might have a growth mindset about your ability to learn new tech skills, but a fixed mindset when it comes to your athletic ability or emotional intelligence. Mindset is contextual, fluid, and changeable. It can vary depending on the environment, task, or even your mood. Understanding this helps us avoid labeling ourselves or others. The goal isn't to be 100% growth-minded at all times. It's to build awareness of when a fixed mindset sneaks in and to learn how to shift out of it with intention. Misconception. Growth mindset is just positive thinking. Growth mindset isn't about pretending everything is great or avoiding negativity. In fact, it requires confronting challenges honestly. Where positive thinking might say, "everything will be fine," growth mindset asks, "what can I learn from this setback?" or "how can I improve next time?" It acknowledges failure, frustration, and difficulty, but sees them as part of the journey, not dead ends. Growth mindset is an active process, not a passive optimism. It takes courage, reflection, and often discomfort. It's not about just being positive. It's about committing to growth, even when it's hard. Some organizations fall into the trap of thinking they can fix deep-rooted issues, like poor performance, low morale, or systemic inequality, simply by telling people to have a growth mindset. But without supportive structures, fair systems, and real opportunities to grow, mindset talk becomes empty rhetoric. Growth mindset isn't a magic wand. It's a framework that works best when backed by strong leadership, meaningful feedback, equitable environments, and access to resources. If someone keeps trying but faces repeated systemic barriers, telling them to just keep trying isn't enough. Growth mindset thrives where there is psychological safety, mentorship, and belonging. Closing thoughts. Reframing the mindset conversation. Understanding what growth mindset is and isn't helps us apply it more effectively. It's not about effort without reflection or positivity without realism. It's not a personality trait, and it's certainly not a quick fix. It's a powerful lens through which we can approach learning, setbacks, and success. When we move beyond the myths, growth mindset becomes a dynamic, nuanced approach to personal and professional development. It empowers us not only to grow, but to create environments where others can grow, too. Section 7. Overcoming setbacks and embracing failure. When we talk about growth mindset, one of the most critical aspects is how we handle failure. People with a fixed mindset often see failure as a direct reflection of their intelligence, talent, or self-worth. But those with a growth mindset, they view failure through an entirely different lens. They see it not as a dead end, but as a detour, a lesson, and sometimes even a blessing in disguise. The role of setbacks in growth. Setbacks are inevitable. No matter how talented, disciplined, or hardworking you are, you will encounter obstacles. A failed test, a lost opportunity, a rejection email. These moments sting, they hurt, but they are also where growth happens. In a growth mindset, setbacks are not signs that you should quit. They are signals that something needs to be learned. They ask you to adjust, to reflect, and to push forward with better strategy, stronger resolve, or improved skill. Let's take the example of Thomas Edison. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That quote embodies the growth mindset. Edison didn't allow repeated failure to deter him. Instead, he reframed failure as part of the learning process. Failure as feedback. What if, instead of fearing failure, we started viewing it as feedback? Feedback is information. It's data that tells us what worked and what didn't. In a growth mindset, failure is not a judgment. It's a message. It says, try again, but this time do something differently. Athletes live this truth all the time. A runner analyzes why they lost a race. Was it pacing? Was it nutrition? Was it their mindset under pressure? They use that failure to prepare smarter next time. Writers receive rejection letters from publishers and editors. They revisit their work, rewrite, improve, and submit again. Each failure contains embedded wisdom, if we are willing to see it. Emotional intelligence and failure. It's important to acknowledge something here. Failure does come with emotional weight. It's natural to feel disappointed, frustrated, or even ashamed. That's not weakness. That's being human. But here's the difference. People with a growth mindset feel those emotions without letting them define their future. They don't avoid difficult feelings. They process them, and then they act. They say to themselves, "This is tough. I feel discouraged, but this is part of the process. I can still learn from this. Emotional regulation is part of resilience, and resilience is a major component of the growth mindset. Reframing the narrative. What story are you telling yourself when things go wrong? If your internal dialogue sounds like, I'm just not good at this always happens to me, why bother trying again? Then that's a sign of a fixed mindset creeping in. Reframing is a tool of the growth mindset. It allows us to rewrite the story. Try replacing that dialogue with, this didn't go as planned. What can I learn from it? Setbacks happen. What's one thing I can do differently next time? This is hard, but hard is where the learning is. The story we tell ourselves shapes the actions we take next. Creating a failure-friendly environment. It's also vital to look at the environment you're in classrooms, teams, or workplaces that punish mistakes harshly, people will naturally start to hide their failures or avoid risk. That kills innovation and learning. A growth mindset flourishes in environments where failure is normalized as part of the journey. Leaders, parents, and educators can reinforce this by responding to failure with curiosity, not criticism. Ask, what did we try? What did we learn? What will we do next time? Normalize experimentation. Celebrate effort. Reward persistence, not just results. Stories of success after failure. There's a reason most success stories include a chapter or several on failure. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job. J.K. Rowling faced multiple rejections before Harry Potter was published. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school varsity team on his first try. What these people had in common wasn't luck. It was the belief that failure did not define them. They used it as fuel. They stayed the course. They got better, and they didn't give up. That's the heart of a growth mindset, not just enduring failure, but using it. Conclusion, falling forward. In the end, setbacks are not signs to stop. They are signs to reflect, regroup, and rise again. Wiser, stronger, and more determined. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean you enjoy failure, but it does mean you aren't afraid of it, because you know each failure is just another step on the path to mastery. So the next time you fall forward. That's how growth begins. Section 8. Building a growth mindset culture in teams and organization. We've talked about the power of a growth mindset at the individual level, how it fuels resilience, embraces challenges, and turns failures into learning. But what happens when an entire team or organization adopts this mindset? In this section, we explore how the growth mindset becomes a cultural force, transforming workplaces, classrooms, and communities. Employees are brainstorming freely, ideas flowing, laughter, and a visible sense of psychological safety. A growth mindset culture is one where effort is valued over mere results, where experimentation is encouraged, and where learning never stops. In such environments, people aren't punished for taking risks or asking questions. They're encouraged to stretch beyond their comfort zones, not just for personal development, but for the growth of the entire group. The power of collective belief. Mindsets are contagious. When leaders model curiosity, humility, and openness to feedback, it sets a tone for the whole team. People start to believe that abilities can be developed not just individually, but collectively. This shared belief is powerful. It shapes how teams react to setbacks, how they handle uncertainty, and how they innovate. A team analyzing a failed project, rather than blame, they're engaged in a what did we learn conversation. Team leader, this didn't go the way we hoped, but let's dig into it. What can we take away from this? How might we approach it differently next time? That's the language of a growth mindset at work. Reflective, open, constructive. It's not about failure, it's about feedback. 2, psychological safety, the bedrock of growth. Psychological safety, the sense that you can speak up, take risks, and make mistakes without fear of humiliation, is foundational to a growth mindset culture. Without it, even the most talented teams can stagnate. People stay silent. They play it safe. Innovation dies. Scene, a tech startup team holds a Failure Friday meeting to celebrate the week's biggest learning moments. Organizations like Google, IDEO, and Pixar have long embraced the value of failure, not because they like to fail, but because they see failure as information, as a signal for what needs refinement, and they ensure their teams feel safe enough to admit missteps and share new ideas. How leaders shape mindset culture. Leaders are the architects of mindset culture. Whether you're a CEO, a coach, or a classroom teacher, how you respond to effort, error, and achievement sends a loud message. Do you reward outcomes only, or do you celebrate growth, perseverance, and collaboration? A manager in a one-on-one meeting. I noticed how much time you spent troubleshooting that issue last week. Even though the solution didn't land immediately, your persistence and analysis made a big impact. That kind of feedback reinforces a culture where effort is meaningful, where the process is valued as much as the result. It shifts the focus from looking smart to becoming smarter. Growth mindset in hiring and development. Building a growth mindset culture starts before someone even joins the team. It begins in hiring. Smart organizations look for people who show adaptability, grit, and a hunger to learn, not just a polished resume or a perfect skill set. Seen interview panel debriefs after meeting two candidates. One had all the right experience, the other had clear potential and coachability. Hiring manager, the second candidate hasn't done exactly this role before, but she showed how she learns fast and stays curious. That's what we need in this phase of our company. Training, mentorship, and feedback loops are the next pieces of the puzzle. Growth cultures invest in people, not just to fill roles, but to expand what's possible, measuring what matters. To reinforce a growth culture, organizations must align what they measure with what they value. If all the metrics emphasize short-term performance, people will prioritize winning over learning. But if metrics also reflect improvement, collaboration, and experimentation, then those behaviors will flourish. Seen performance review meeting. Review includes risk-taking, learning agility, and collaboration as key metrics. Growth mindset organizations don't just say they value learning, they operationalize it. They bake it into goals, KPIs, and recognition systems. Challenges in shifting culture. Let's be honest, shifting a fixed mindset culture doesn't happen overnight. It requires unlearning, consistent modeling, and a tolerance for discomfort. People may resist at first. They may fear being vulnerable or doubt that the change is real. That's why patience and persistence matter. Leaders need to model the mindset shift over time, reinforcing it through actions, not just slogans. Seen an all-hands meeting. CEO speaks candidly about their own mistakes and learning journey. I used to believe I had to have all the answers, but I've realized that leading is about asking better questions and being willing to grow too. That's how real change takes root, from the top to every corner of the organization. Closing thought, narrator. A growth mindset isn't just an individual attribute. It's a collective strength. When teams believe they can learn together, adapt together, and rise together, there's no limit to what they can create. Section 9. Overcoming obstacles with a growth mindset. Obstacles, challenges, setbacks. These are not just inevitable, they are essential. Every person striving to grow, learn, and succeed will encounter them. But the difference between those who are defeated and those who rise lies in one key factor: mindset. A growth mindset sees obstacles not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones. It reframes failure as feedback. It turns frustration into fuel. Let's explore how a growth mindset changes the way we deal with adversity. A young woman, Sarah, sits at her desk, overwhelmed by textbooks and rejection letters. She's failed the medical school entrance exam. Again, meet Sarah. She's dreamed of becoming a doctor since she was a child, but the path hasn't been easy. 2 failed attempts at the entrance exam, a pile of rejection letters, and now self-doubt creeps in. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe I should give up. This is a defining moment. Will she retreat or will she reframe? Now, enter the growth mindset. Flashback to Sarah listening to a mentor speak during a seminar. Mentor, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of success. Every no is one step closer to your yes. Learn from each attempt, adjust, grow. With this echoing in her mind, Sarah makes a choice, not to quit, but to pivot. She reviews her previous mistakes, seeks feedback, enrolls in a prep course, adjusts her study habits, and most importantly, she believes she can improve because she now understands ability is not fixed. It can grow. Cut to scenes of Sarah studying with focus, asking questions, reviewing errors, and encouraging herself with post-it notes, saying, not yet, but getting there. Obstacles are no longer signs to stop. They're signals to adapt. Each setback becomes a lesson, and eventually, she retakes the exam and passes. Scene shifts to an interview with Sarah, now in medical school. I didn't get smarter overnight. I just stopped seeing failure as final. I started seeing it as feedback. That changed everything. Sarah's story reflects a powerful truth. A growth mindset doesn't eliminate challenges. It equips us to face them, to endure them, to grow through them. But how exactly does this mindset transform the obstacle itself? Let's break it down. Visual aid or bullet point animation. Reframing failure as data. A fixed mindset sees failure as a reflection of personal inadequacy. A growth mindset sees it as data, valuable information about what to try next. Embracing the process. Instead of obsessing over the outcome, a growth mindset invests in the process. Learning becomes more important than instant success. Cultivating grit. Grit, the blend of passion and perseverance, is closely tied to a growth mindset. It's the fuel to keep going when things get hard. For asking better questions. Rather than saying, why can't I do this? People with a growth mindset ask, what can I learn from this? Or how can I improve next time? 5, normalizing struggle. Struggle isn't shameful. It's human. A growth mindset views struggle as the price of progress, not a signal to stop. Seen various people, students, athletes, entrepreneurs facing failures but pushing forward with determination. Narrated whether it's a student failing a test, an athlete losing a championship, or an entrepreneur watching a business collapse, every obstacle contains the seed of growth. With a fixed mindset, that seed never sprouts. With a growth mindset, it grows into resilience. A growth mindset doesn't remove the mountain, but it gives you the boots to climb it. Every step, every slip, every climb becomes part of your transformation. So the next time you face a setback, ask yourself, not why me, but what now? The answer may change your life. Section 10, cultivating growth mindset culture. So far, we've explored the power of individual transformation through adopting a growth mindset. But what happens when a group of people, an organization, a school, a family, a community, commits collectively to this way of thinking? The result is profound. Cultivating a culture of growth mindset doesn't just elevate individuals, it reshapes the very environment they operate in. In this section, we shift from the personal to the collective. We'll explore what it means to foster a culture that celebrates effort, learning, and resilience, not just in one person, but in entire teams, institutions, and societies. Because real, sustainable change happens when these ideas are not isolated beliefs, but shared values. A growth mindset culture is a shared environment where the belief in development and learning is the norm, not the exception. In such a culture, mistakes are not stigmatized, they're analyzed. Success is not reserved for the naturally gifted. It's seen as the product of effort, strategy, and perseverance. Feedback is not a threat, it's a resource. Think of a school where students aren't ranked to emphasize comparison, but rather encouraged to measure themselves against their past performance. Or a company where innovation isn't driven by fear of failure, but by curiosity and the willingness to take risks. In these environments, people don't just survive challenges, they seek them out. This culture creates safety and opportunity. Psychological safety to be vulnerable and make mistakes, and the opportunity to grow beyond what was thought possible. A growth mindset culture also democratizes success. It recognizes that everyone, regardless of their starting point, has the potential to develop. The message becomes clear. You belong here, and you can improve. That kind of belief is contagious. Cultivating a growth mindset culture begins at the top. Whether in a classroom, workplace, or sports team, leadership sets the tone. Leaders who embody a growth mindset create the conditions for it to spread. First, leaders must model vulnerability and openness. When a manager admits to a mistake and discusses what they learned, it signals that learning is more important than image. When a teacher reflects on a lesson that didn't go as planned and invites student feedback, it fosters trust and mutual respect. Second, the feedback loop must be redefined. Instead of using evaluations to judge competence, leaders can use them to encourage development. Constructive, specific, and actionable feedback becomes the norm. Praise is focused on effort, strategy, and progress, rather than innate talent. Third, expectations must be aligned with the belief in growth. That means setting high standards, not impossibly high, but challenging enough to stretch individuals and offering the tools and support to meet them. It also means celebrating improvement, not just achievement. Finally, leaders need to build systems that reinforce the mindset. This includes training, mentoring, policies, and recognition programs that align with growth principles. For example, in a growth-oriented organization, employee reviews might ask, what skills did you develop this year? Rather than just what results did you produce? Leaders hold the blueprint for culture. If they build it on a foundation of learning, resilience, and development, others will follow. A culture is shaped not just by ideas, but by structures and environments. To build a growth mindset culture, it's important to intentionally design spaces, physical, emotional, and social, that reinforce growth. Start with the physical space. Classrooms filled with student work in progress, whiteboards with problem-solving sketches, or office walls lined with brainstorming notes send a message. This is a place where thinking and learning happen. Environments should be collaborative and flexible, allowing for mistakes, iteration, and discussion. Then consider the emotional space. Do people feel safe to speak up, to share half-formed ideas, to ask questions? Psychological safety is a cornerstone of any growth-oriented space. This means addressing not just what people are allowed to say, but how they are received when they say it. Finally, look at the social environment. What kinds of conversations dominate? Are people encouraged to challenge each other constructively? Are successes celebrated in ways that highlight effort and learning? Are failures treated as opportunities for discussion and improvement? These social cues shape behavior just as powerfully as any formal policy. Creating this kind of environment doesn't happen overnight. It requires intention, persistence, and alignment at all levels. But when done right, the impact is extraordinary. A space where people are energized by the challenge of growth, rather than paralyzed by the fear of failure. Let's look at some real-world examples of what a growth mindset culture looks like in practice. Education. At Stanford University, Professor Joe Bowler runs math programs where mistakes are not just tolerated, they're encouraged. Her classrooms are structured around the idea that the brain grows most when it struggles. Students work on complex problems in groups, and wrong answers become part of the learning journey. The result? Higher engagement, better understanding, and students who believe they can succeed in a subject they once feared. Business. At Microsoft, CEO Satya Nadella transformed the company culture by explicitly shifting from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all mindset. He encouraged experimentation, cross-functional collaboration, and learning from failure. This mindset shift wasn't just philosophical. It led to a measurable increase in innovation, market share, and employee engagement. Legendary coach John Wooden is often cited as an example of growth mindset leadership. He focused on process over outcome, teaching his athletes that success is the peace of mind that comes from knowing you did your best to become the best you are capable of becoming. Under his guidance, effort, preparation, and character were just as important as winning. In medical institutions like the Cleveland Clinic, growth mindset training is used to reduce medical errors. Staff are trained to view feedback not as criticism, but as a critical part of patient safety. This has led to improved communication among teams, better outcomes for patients, and a more respectful, learning-centered work environment. These examples show that growth mindset culture isn't just a theory, it's a practice that works. And it works across contexts, from classrooms to boardrooms to operating rooms. Of course, building a growth mindset culture isn't without its challenges. The transition from a fixed to a growth environment can be uncomfortable, even threatening, especially for those used to being valued for their natural talent or those who fear judgment when they make mistakes. One major barrier is skepticism. People may say this is just a trendy buzzword, or some people are just not cut out for this. That's why it's important to pair mindset work with evidence, stories, and real-life practice, not just talk. Demonstrating the effectiveness of growth mindset through pilot programs or team case studies can be persuasive. Another challenge is inconsistency. If some parts of an organization promote growth while others continue to reward fixed traits, like test scores or performance metrics without context, it creates confusion and undermines the message. Consistency in language, values, and recognition is essential. Resistance also arises from fear of being seen as inadequate, fear of not being good enough. That's where leadership plays a critical role in building safety, modeling vulnerability, and providing support. People need to know that they won't be punished for trying, failing, and learning. Lastly, time and patience are needed. Cultural change is a long game. Quick fixes don't last, and real transformation requires investment in training, in conversations, in leadership development, and in continuous reflection. A growth mindset is not just a personal belief. It's a shared value, a cultural cornerstone, and a lens through which we view potential. When individuals adopt it, they change. When organizations, schools, and communities adopt it, everything changes. Imagine a world where people are not boxed in by labels like smart or average, but encouraged to explore, struggle, and succeed in their own time. Imagine workplaces where creativity and innovation are fueled by curiosity, not by fear of being wrong. Imagine classrooms where students are not afraid of red marks, but see them as stepping stones. That's the power of a growth mindset culture. But it doesn't build itself. It takes leaders willing to lead with humility, teams willing to embrace discomfort, and systems that support learning over perfection. It takes intention, belief, and a deep respect for human potential. And here's the most important thing. It's possible, not just in theory, but in practice. The stories are already being written in classrooms, companies, and communities all over the world. You can be part of that story. You can lead, support, and shape the culture around you.